This is the teaching on the use of Archangel Michael's sword of blue flame. When you give calls to Archangel Michael, when you use the tape you've been using of decrees and songs, you come to the song we sing to the sword of blue flame. Archangel Michael carries that sword of blue flame. All of his legions of angels do. They have blue armor. They are shafts of blue flame themselves, and they wield a sword of blue flame when they enter into the density of earth, the physical plane, the astral plane. And these legions of light are spending almost 24 hours a day in the binding of demons and clearing of the harm, the burdens, the dangers that come upon the servants of God and everyone. None of us has any idea of how much calamity and burden and really dangerous situations we are spared. It's funny to hear people blame God. I've said this before in my seminar. They blame God for what happens, and they don't give God the credit for what doesn't happen, because they will never know what didn't happen. So how do you prove that an Archangel Michael decree works? You simply notice less and less and less interference with getting things done in your life and doing what you're supposed to be doing. So the sword of blue flame is key. And early in my training as a messenger, I was told that one had to use a steel sword for exorcism and the binding of all types of demons. And I was told that the sword cut through the astral plane. And so the nearest sword I could find that would fit the description of a steel sword was the biggest kitchen knife I could find. So I used that for a while, and then Achila on the path got a hold of some tungsten steel and actually fashioned a sword about this long, and got a handle someplace and put it together and painted the whole thing a bright blue. And so I used that sword for a while. So at various points in my life, people have offered me other swords, and I have continued to use them, and so I want to tell you about using the sword. First of all, finally, on the advice of El Moria and Archangel Michael, and with further teachings that I'm going to read to you, we did secure this particular sword. We actually checked the entire world market of stainless steel swords, and this fit the bill. So it is steel, it's made in Taiwan, it has Archangel Michael's name on it. Now, my steel sword is sharpened, and you are able to purchase a sword like this from us, but we sell it to you blunt and advise you not to sharpen it. No matter how careful you are, there may come a moment of imbalance where a sharpened steel sword may do some harm. So the concept of this sword I will give to you in a moment, and then I will get back to how you use it. So I'm going to give you a reading from Blavatsky from the volume Isis Unveiled, Volume 1. She writes, "But we will now give a few historical instances going to show that some demons or elementary spirits are afraid of sword, knife, or anything sharp. We do not pretend to explain the reason. That is the province of physiology and psychology. Unfortunately, physiologists have not yet been able to even establish the relations between speech and thought, and so have handed it over to the metaphysicians, who in their turn, according to Fournier, have done nothing. Done nothing, we say, but claimed everything. No fact could be presented to some of them that was too large for these learned gentlemen to at least try to stuff into their pigeonholes, labeled with some fancy Greek name expressive of everything else but the true nature of the phenomenon. Alas, alas, my son, exclaims the wise Mufti of Aleppo to his son Ibrahim, who choked himself with the head of a huge fish. When will you realize that your stomach is smaller than the ocean? Or as Mrs. Catherine Crowe remarks in her Night Side of Nature, when will our scientists admit that their intellects are no measure of God's almighty designs. We will not ask which of the ancient writers mention facts of seemingly supernatural nature, but rather which of them does not. In Homer we find Ulysses evoking the spirit of his friend, the soothsayer Tiresias. Preparing for the ceremony of the festival of blood, Ulysses draws his sword and thus frightens away the thousands of phantoms attracted by the blood of the sacrifice. The friend himself, the so long expected Tiresias, dares not approach him, so long as Ulysses holds the dreaded weapon in his hand. Aeneas prepares to descend to the kingdom of the shadows, and as soon as they approach its entrance, the Sibyl who guides him utters her warning to the Trojan hero and orders him to draw his sword and clear himself a passage through the dense crowd of flitting forms. Glanville gives a wonderful narrative of the apparition of the drummer of Tedworth, which happened in 1661, in which the Sin Lecca, or double of the drummer's sorcerer, was evidently very much afraid of the sword. Selous, in his work, gives a long story of his sister-in-law being thrown into a most fearful state by an elementary demon taking possession of her. She was finally cured by a conjurer, a foreigner named Anaphalangus, who began by threatening the invisible occupant of her body with a naked sword until he finally dislodged him. Selous introduces a whole catechism of demonology which he gives in the following terms as far as we remember. You want to know, asked the conjurer, whether the bodies of the spirits can be hurt by sword or any other weapon? Yes, they can. Any hard substance striking them can make them sensible to pain, and though their bodies be made neither of solid nor firm substance, they feel it the same. For in beings endowed with sensibility, it is not their nerves only which possess the faculty of feeling, but likewise also the spirit which resides in them. The body of a spirit can be sensible in its whole, as well as in each of its parts. Without the help of any physical organism, the spirit sees, hears, and if you touch him, feels your touch. If you divide him in two, he will feel the pain as would any living man, for he is matter still, though so refined as to be generally invisible to our eye. One thing, however, distinguishes him from the living man, that when a man's limbs are once divided, their parts cannot be reunited very easily. But cut a demon in two, and you will see him immediately join himself together. As water or air closes in behind a solid body passing through it, and no trace is left, so does the body of a demon condense itself again when the penetrative weapon is withdrawn from the wound. But every rent made in it causes him pain nevertheless. That is why demons dread the point of a sword or any sharp weapon. Let those who want to see them flee try the experiment. One of the most learned scholars of his century, Bodin, the demonologian, held the same opinion, that both the human and cosmical elementaries were sorely afraid of swords and daggers. It is also the opinion of Porphyry, Iamblichus, and Plato. Plutarch mentions it several times. The practicing Theurgists knew it well and acted accordingly, and many of the latter assert that the demons suffer from any rent made in their bodies. Bodin tells us a wonderful story to this effect in his work on the Daemons. I remember, says the author, that in 1557 an elemental demon, one of those who are called thundering, fell down with a lightning into the house of Poudot, the shoemaker, and immediately began flinging stones all about the room. We picked up so many of them that the landlady filled a large chestful after having securely closed the windows and doors and locked the chest itself. But it did not prevent the demon in the least from introducing other stones into the room, but without injuring anyone for all that. Latomy, who was then quarter president, a magistrate of the district, came to see what was the matter. Immediately upon his entrance, the spirit knocked the cap off his head and made him run away. It had lasted for over 6 days when Monsieur Jean Morne, counselor at the Presidial, came to fetch me to see the mystery. When I entered the house, someone advised the master of it to pray to God with all his heart and to wheel round a sword in the air about the room. He did so. On that following day, the landlady told us that from that very moment they did not hear the least noise in the house, but that during the 7 previous days that it lasted, they could not get a moment's rest. So that is what Blavatsky wrote down about swords and demons. Everything that she says is true and confirmed by the masters. So, how to use the sword? This sword has a place for your fingers to grasp it. You can hold it tight. It has a protection so your hand will not bump into the blade, and a protection on the end. First of all, you have to make up your mind that you're going to hold the sword tight enough that in using it, you will not lose your grip and fling it in some way as to be harmful. So that's the first thing you decide in the will of your mind, to hold on to the sword. What you need to do is to make deliberate strokes. First of all, you want to clear yourself. Why do you need to clear yourself? We are all constantly subject to discarnate entities, to demons or malevolent spirits. We learned in our lecture that the astral ka has a decay rate, that the astral sheath separates from the physical body and remains, that it had to be cast into the Maxin light by the Emperor Wallen to be sure that that astral shell of Philos did not go out and make mischief and karma for him while he went on to Devakin. And I told you at that time that ministers of our church perform a ceremony of demagnetizing the body of its light, calling for the encirclement of that astral ka, that it be taken and not be allowed to roam about as a ghost-like form, an imposter of the real self, which undiscriminating people actually think is the departed person, but is not. So then we are subject to all kinds of discarnates that are associated with such things as alcohol, sugar, nicotine, drugs, prescription drugs, types of addictions. These entities hang on the bodies of people, and they especially go after light bearers. The question about wearing red orange in particular, comes up here because it is an open door for the invasion of your aura and your household to those elements. The masters tell us that there are millions of discarnate entities of souls who cannot make it to the etheric octaves, who are simply loose on the planet. That's why we give a Friday night service, which you are welcome to attend if you become a keeper of the flame and join our study group here in Seattle. It's a very important service we render. We make calls on Friday night in a vigil for all who have passed on in that week on the entire earth, that their souls be taken to the levels of the etheric plane where they belong for their training or their service, or that if they are evil souls, they be bound and kept in those places in the astral plane where they can do no harm to those in physical embodiment. So we are also praying for the binding of addicting demons and entities, and I'm going to pass out a sheet to you after this instruction that gives you a list of types of entities that are associated with certain moods, mood swings, and certain substances, chemical and otherwise. For instance, there are entities that amplify grief or death or sexuality or the misuse of the sacred fire. All kinds of entities, and we have been given their names by the masters because Jesus taught us that you need to speak the name of the demons you are casting out. You can use the sword on yourself, or you can use the sword on a loved one by cutting around a photograph, actually taking the sword and going around a photograph of the person. If you are working with someone who is familiar with the use of the sword, then you can make calls for that person. So the point of connection of unwanted demons and entities to the body are the 7 chakras. And they are along the spinal altar. And the way entities steal your light is that they actually grip into the spine, the central nervous system, and siphon off the light of people. The reason why addictions are addictions is because if someone has an alcohol addiction, for instance, People who have lived on earth who have been alcoholics, who are now disembodied, will be on the astral plane. And then there are liquor entities, spirita, spiritus, that embody the liquor itself, and between the combination of the two, fastening on to an individual who is an alcoholic, they continually goad that alcoholic to drink more. And the more that the alcohol is in the bloodstream, the more there is a craving for it, hence an addiction. The reason it's so difficult to stop smoking is that the same process is there. You get disembodied spirits who can no longer experience through a physical body. If they want to have a cigarette, they have to tie into somebody else's body who is a smoker and convince that person that it's time to smoke a cigarette. So with that kind of pressure and intensity of discarnates, invisible influences, you can see that people can try with all of their might to give up habits that have to do with the misuse of energy or substances, and they are simply not able to do it. Child abuse, child molesting is another addiction. There are horrendous demons connected with this, and there are people who are deranged and who have entities and demons on them who can only derive sexual gratification by taking it from children, small children, babies, molesting them, taking the pure virgin light of their bodies. And these people, if you talk to them, if you see them interviewed, they are absolutely helpless because there are such vicious demons who are out to destroy children through individuals who are totally hooked and insane on this subject. So the sword is effective, but it's even more effective if you call to Archangel Michael to place his presence over you and call to him to put his sword of blue flame over this physical steel sword. So if you want to get where you can see me, I'm going to stand over here and demonstrate this. While you're giving your calls to Archangel Michael, you don't need to just sit there and give the calls. You can say, Lord Michael before, Lord Michael behind, Lord Michael to the right, Lord Michael to the left, Lord Michael above, Lord Michael below, Lord Michael, wherever I go. I am his love protecting here. I am his love protecting here. I am his love protecting here. Now I'm going under my feet because as you walk in the earth, you tie into the ground, the earth, and into records that are beneath you. You change hands and use the sword on all sides. Those demons who encourage addiction are always going to tie in to the base of the brain and the back of the neck. So this is an area where you use the sword, and it's almost as though you would visualize yourself as a tree with all of the roots exposed, except these roots are going into you at every place on your body. And so you have the sensation that you're actually hacking away at these tie-ins to you where, let's say you go to a horror movie. That's a place to get a zillion entities onto you. And there's all types of horror. I mean, there's bloodletting, there's voodooism, there's fear, there's a tremendous sensation of anxiety, of thrill, of the rushing of energy. And a place where horror movies play is just is a den of entities. So it puts you in one mood or another, either fear, shock, terror, death, the contemplation of blood, and all that. It's very low vibration. It's in the astral plane. And you would use this sword and really use it in this manner continuously. I mean, for the course of giving your Michaels, you would be going around the back, making sure you cover the entire spine. You would be going in the front, where you would be visualizing the chakras being not only cut free, but also sealed. And then you take the other arm and do the same thing. Now, everywhere where this sword goes, if there is a demon there, that demon will be sliced in two, feel the pain, not want to have the experience again and again, and will flee. But be careful about these demons. They will flee into the corner or into the closet or up in the ceiling or into the bathroom. We've been advised by Archangel Michael, for instance, when you go into a hotel room, the first thing you do is you take out your sword and you make calls to Archangel Michael, and you cut in all areas of the room, into the corners, crossways, up and down. The entire bed has to be done, the bathroom, all the areas, the closet, and so forth. At the same time, you are making your calls for that room to be absolutely sealed in your tube of light, which you give, in a wall of blue flame with a violet flame in the center. You'll find you'll have a very peaceful night and not be disturbed and not be restless. And restless sleep is often caused by this. Also the restless sleep of children. So if you are going to work on someone else, as I have done, I'll ask Jean Vosser to come up here so I can do this. Now when I see people and I make calls for people and I do counseling, I will often use the sword to assist them. And the first thing I would ask them to do is put their arms straight down so that I can cut around them. So I would make fiats, beloved Archangel Michael, cut Jean Vosser free now from all fundamentalist demons that he has encountered on his entire stump.
Appreciate that.
Cut him free from all weariness, all fatigue, all burdens in the body, all food and substance he has had to partake of while on his trip that are not on his diet. Cut him free from all records of all past embodiments back to the very first embodiment on earth. Cut him free from all ties to individuals who are tied to death and hell. Cut free now all sympathy and replace it with a divine compassion. You can raise your arms now. It's very important that the person you are doing this with doesn't move. As you recognize, I have the sharpened sword. So whatever I might be working with Jean or Achila, and I would ask what the problem is, and I would make calls on that situation. Now that is a very thorough job, except we didn't do under your feet. Okay? But you have to hold it up longer. Okay. Okay, there you go. Okay, good. Thank you, Jean.
Appreciate it.
Now, if you wish to pray for a loved one, someone came forward tonight talking about a brother into drugs and selling drugs and so forth. You get together with that friend or relative and you ask if you can have a picture taken of yourself with them. And you get a nice, good, sharp photo, not one where the sun is directly overhead and all you see is shadows, but get a good photograph of yourself with that person. Have an 8.5 by 11 photograph made of the person and get their whole body and put it on your altar. And when you do your calls to Archangel Michael daily, and always do them with the tape, if those decrees get too slow for you, you can always stop the tape and accelerate your decrees and start it up again at the next decree. But you need the reinforcement of the 800 voices that gave and recorded those decrees in Montana, because you get the vibration of our chapel, our staff, and our community, and you're right there even if you're 1,000 miles away. So don't underestimate the power of decreeing with tapes. If you found the violet flame tape getting slow for you this weekend, then take number 2, it's faster, and use the tapes. They're so very important. So you would place that picture on your altar of that loved one, and you would take the sword every single day and cut around the picture. You would close your eyes and visualize the person as though he were standing there, or as though you were standing where he is. You can visualize him in his house or wherever he frequents. Close your eyes, call in the name of my mighty I Am Presence and Holy Christ Self, Archangel Michael and legions of light, cut free my beloved brother, and then give his full name, and demand the binding of all demons and discarnates of drugs, and everything that is afflicting him, including the suicide entity. And visualize this sword actually plunging into the core of the suicide entity, into the heart of that demon that would influence that one to commit suicide. So that is very effective, and the reason you put yourself in the picture is because you are also transferring your presence in prayer right next to the person you are praying for. This is a very effective prayer method. And this is why I like to have pictures of you when you write to me asking me for healing and to do work for you. A current picture is important because a current now picture shows your present aura. It records the state of your health, every organ in your body, and where you are. So if I'm going to give you any advice, I need to be able to see that photograph from today and assess the situation, and if there's any counseling I have to give you, I can get it back to you. Once you use the sword and you realize how much freer you feel when you use it, you almost cannot stop using it. I mean, it's a very important part of your protection and Archangel Michael ritual. El Morya has actually given the instruction, together with Archangel Michael, that our students should never sharpen their sword. I am the one who has the sharpened sword, and I am able to make calls for all of the keepers of the flame in the world from the altar. And when you use the sword that isn't sharpened, you will gain a certain percentage of victory over those demons. And if you call for my daily work with the sword to help you, this sharpened sword will do the rest. I don't need your name, I don't need a letter from you, I don't even need a picture. You just make the call that the calls that I'm making that day and every day are assisting you as you make your calls. You understand that this could be a tremendous calamity and burden upon our organization if any harm should come to anyone who is using a sharpened sword of any kind in this purpose. You may have a pattern in your life of repetitive mishaps, accidents, situations that keep coming back that cause a vexation of your spirit. You know, the Murphy's Law type situations, anything that can go wrong will go wrong and does. You can use the sword on household chaos, disorganization in your family, electrical equipment that gets stubborn and doesn't work, computer malfunctioning. Entities and demons actually get into computers, believe it or not. You have to take your sword around computers and you'd be surprised how they start working again. There are malicious mischief entities that just come along to make life difficult. You can cut free members of your family, as I mentioned, in the way I mentioned. And often our own shortcomings, our weaknesses, our vulnerabilities are exacerbated by mischievous demons and entities. These influence children and cause them to have mood swings and emotional problems. You need to guard your children against this, first of all, by not letting them eat excessive amounts of sugar. And remember that all soft drinks today have caffeine in them. You're giving them a caffeine addiction and a sugar addiction at an early age. It causes wide mood swings and as well as damage to the body. So you can use your sword all day to bind the sugar demons or the caffeine entities, but if you don't stop your children and yourselves from partaking of this, you're going to continue to have emotional problems. So there is a chemistry in the physical, and we must obey its laws. There's an alchemy that is spiritual, and there is a sword that penetrates both the astral and the physical plane. Now, if you have a larger sword or even this sword and you want to carefully cut around something or someone, you can use it in this way so that you are in control of both ends of it. Never use any abrupt or jagged movements. Now I'd like to have the 2 entity decrees passed out so that you can use these. The decree 711E, names of discarnate entities and possessing demons. There are anti-entities that move against the Word, the Christ, the Father, the Son, the Mother, the Holy Spirit, the mind of God, the Buddha within you, your victory, your awareness, and your action. Awareness, action is the byword of Chilas. We become aware of a situation, we take action on it. As soon as we do, discarnates oppose us. There are anti-do-it entities, anti-make-it-happen entities, and anti-decree entities that'll convince you that you don't need to decree. There are anger entities, chemical entities, death entities. dope and tobacco entities, gossip entities, Halloween entities, insanity entities, liquor entities, condemnation entities, lust of money entities, sentimentality entities, sex and self-infatuation entities. So when you spot a problem on yourself or a loved one, look for the name of the entity and name it. And in the name Jesus Christ, call to Archangel Michael to bind that entity. This entire list is used in conjunction with our Astrea Decree 1014, where you insert all the names, and that's what we do on Friday nights. The other entity decree comes from our decree book. It is 711, and it deals with discarnates from souls and souls who are passed on who need our help. So those are the two types of calls I wanted you to have as a result of listening to my lecture on dealing with death, discarnates, and malevolent spirits. Do you have any question on the subject of the use of the sword or on entities? Well, the ka is part of you, while you are your car. Oh. Are you from Boston? Okay, in Boston they say ka. Sure, you use your sword around your car, but when you get in your car, you are giving your Archangel Michael tape all the time, and you're decreeing and visualizing Michael using his sword. Any other questions? Well, no, entities can't pick up swords. This is a sacred sword. This is a sword for sacred ritual. It has its scabbard, which was not placed here. It's a leather sheath that is kept on it at all times when you are not using it. It comes with it. It's a very nice leather case. You keep it on your altar, and like anything else precious to you, you don't leave it where strangers, children, or those not sympathetic with your beliefs will get at that sword. You should have no problem whatsoever keeping it in a place where only you know where it is, and yet it's handy.
You said use it on a photograph. Did you say visualize the person in three-dimension, or just going from front and back?
Well, see, a photograph actually records the aura of a person. So I would be going around the photograph in this way. I wouldn't go to the back of it, but I would go across the front of it and make the sign of the cross with the sword. We have a decree where we make the sign of the cross, and we make it before with the sign of the cross, behind, to the right, to the left, above, beneath, and in the center of our form. And each time you make that sign, you visualize a flaming blue cross around you. So that is in that Archangel Michael decree you've been giving today, where it says I visualize it and I make the call by the power of the 3 times 3. So while you're looking at the photograph, you are seeing the person as you know them. You automatically see them in the flesh when you see the photograph. So that's why it's very good for your own visualization, because your intense visualization allows Archangel Michael to go to that person and cut him free while you are using the sword. That's why the use of the sword must be accompanied by the call. You must make very specific calls for what you want the sword to do, what you want Archangel Michael's sword superimposed upon it, and his legions of light to do for you, your loved ones, your children. Children need this protection so very much. They are prey and subject to invisible forces. And when they are crying all night and you can't find the cause, or when they have problems of mood swings, it's so very important to recognize that children are full of light, and those on the astral plane who have no light seek to take it from them. So you must have a vigil for them.
I work at a mental hospital with criminal insane, and I know that Archangel Michael is actually continually sending calls to and was constantly while I'm here. Can I use a symbolic sword as I'm coming off the board to protect?
As you're coming off
the ward. That I just go on and off.
Well, you can't have any kind of a sword any way, shape, or form.
No, but a symbolic sword.
I don't know what a symbolic sword is.
Well, just to visualize. A sword.
Well, you can always call. You see, you have to call to Archangel Michael to use his sword. Archangel Michael, come into this hospital for the criminally insane, bind every demon and discarnate upon them, and circle this entire place, exorcise this hospital. If you're going to make calls like that in a place where there are insane people who are teeming with demons, that's why they're insane, you have to have a tremendous momentum with Archangel Michael. You should do his full tape daily, because as soon as you start making the calls for them to be bound, if you haven't given that call enough or to get the job done once and for all, those demons will become angered and they'll work against you. So this is nothing to be dealt with lightly. This is why I have given you the Archangel Michael tape as well as the Archangel Michael rosary. If you're dealing with a serious situation in your family of addiction or of things like suicide, you should have the Archangel Michael rosary. It comes with a booklet. You just follow the tape, read it, and it is very powerful. The two combined will really make you a part of the enlistment of the legions of Archangel Michael. Very much needed at this period of our history. Any other questions on this subject?
Some people speak of the sword in a very, very personal way, and suggest you should have your own sword. Husband and wife, share a sword.
You can share a sword between husband and wife. It is a personal thing, but there's no reason why you can't use one at the altar. You might decide sometime you each want your own, but there's nothing wrong with sharing it. Well, if ideally you need a picture from a person now, because now they're in trouble, now they're in that condition. If you can't get it, it's awkward to ask for it, it takes a lot of time, you take the best picture you've got and work with it right away.
I forgot why you said we are to be in that same picture as the other person.
Because you are offering the prayers, and so as you visualize the person, you visualize yourself going to that person's home, standing by him with Archangel Michael and cutting him free as you are cutting the picture free. So it's like you're placing your presence with that person as a guardian. You're like a guardian angel who is standing for him in his hour of trial and need. Specific what? No? It is because people needed a sword that we decided to standardize it, and this is the one Archangel Michael approved. The shape of the sword, is this a falchion? I seem to forget what this one is called. It's good because you see legions of light, including ruby ray angels, use a curved sword. It's a very effective, and it's also short enough that it's not dangerous, and you can wield it. It's not unwieldy.
Hi, I recently heard the word, or the term, doppelganger. Have you heard that word as a type of, I don't know if it's a spirit or a thought or what?
No,
You're not familiar with the term.
but anyway, you don't have to know all the terms. Have sword, will exercise. Centuries-old momentums, yes, Archangel Michael mentioned that. It takes a tenacity to get rid of a habit that you've had for 10 embodiments. You know, a bad habit that you finally decided you've had it long enough. You do need to go after it, and you need to give the 1014 decree that's on the El Moria tape, the call to Estrella with a circle and sword of blue flame. So you just have to be persistent. You didn't build it in a day, it's not going to come down in a day, but every day you decree, it's getting less and less and less until you walk right out of it. And one day you wake up and you remember that you haven't done this thing or been involved in this vibration for months, and you didn't even think about it because God took it from you. Sword questions.
You about some of these swords that are also very well, such as Kaichi swords and spring steel and aluminum. Those would be also
Aluminum swords? No, it has to be steel. It has to be steel. Nothing else will do but steel. Nothing else will cut through the astral plane. As far as all kinds of swords, it's up to you, as long as it's steel.
One other question about entities. In the Mahatma letters, there was a mention about burning incense and certain types of incense, I guess, to keep things.
Pine oil is very good to burn, for elimination of entities. They do not like pine oil. Yes.
Does it have to be physical sword or imaginary one?
No, it has to be a physical sword to remove the demons effectively. The imaginary one is the one that Archangel Michael wields. It's not imaginary, of course, but that's the one that's a spiritual sword. You don't ever have to use this sword, by the way. I'm not insisting that you do this. I'm telling you it's a technique long known by the Great White Brotherhood, that it is effective, it does work, and it will work where nothing else you have tried has worked, in the most difficult situations. We're preparing for our dictation now, so you can put your books and things beneath your seats. The best meditative posture is your feet flat on the floor, hands cupped in your lap, and you can meditate upon God, your I Am Presence, the flame in your heart, any form of meditation that is preferred by you. We are asking you to be as quiet as possible. There's no smoking here at this time, and we'd like to ask if you would have to leave, that you do not do so during this dictation, but wait till its conclusion. A dictation, as you know, is not channeling. It comes from God through the agency of the Holy Spirit, is delivered by an ascended master or an archangel. This evening, it will be Archangel Gabriel. As you make your attunement with God, so you are also raising your consciousness to the level of an archangel. I ask you to give your heart to God in these moments. The dictation is a form of communion with the heavenly hosts, and as I've mentioned before, I consider the word channeling to be the equivalent of spiritualism and taking dictations from discarnate entities. And in this lecture this evening, we have seen why it can be so dangerous as well as inaccurate. I believe that the communion of the saints is lawful. There are saints on earth, those who are pursuing a path of God, and there are saints in heaven. The saints in heaven are our brothers and sisters who have gone before us. They are our teachers and friends. We have as much right to commune with them, and they with us, as we do with one another, because we are part of what the Catholic Church calls the mystical body of God, which is in heaven and on earth. So in that oneness through the Holy Spirit, we enjoy this communion, and it is truly a gift of God to each one of us. Our meditation music will give you the opportunity to extend your heart to God.
My pilgrim
Children of the sun, out of the octaves of the highest heaven, I am descended to speak to you in this hour of earth changes and of your soul's path unto reunion with God. You have heard my messengers speak to you of the paths beyond the grave. May you appreciate well that this is truly the hour of preparation for your soul's victory, but not alone for your soul, but for all evolutions of earth who are turned toward God in this hour. I come with legions of seraphim and Justinius, captain of seraphic bands, in answer to the calls and prayers of millions upon earth. We send our legions of light into the very depths of this planet, at all levels where there is profound suffering and souls lost, and we go forth in the service of Christ the King to minister to life. We enlist you in that service, for by the teaching, by the alerting and the awakening, by the comforting and the exhortation, you might also be our mouthpiece and convey the teachings of God, which are the teachings of Jesus Christ and all saints of heaven. I am Gabriel of the flame, and the flame I do impart, for the flame is healing. It is the restoration of the soul unto wholeness. It is the great gathering by the power of the Holy Spirit of all of the forces of your being scattered to the winds in idle moments of idle sowings. Yes, I have come to give the annunciation unto the Holy Mary, and I come again and again to give the annunciation unto sons and daughters of God of their own soul's victory in the light. I come to tell you it is the hour and the lifetime when all things are truly possible in God. May you know that your Redeemer liveth, and that there does come nigh to you not only angels, but the Lord Christ himself, who would hold you to his heart and envelop you in the resurrection flame. Let there be the acceleration of your life, and may you know the true ministration of the word. I, therefore, in the name of God and by his leave, do send forth my light into all nations of the earth, and into those who are warring against the people of God. I send forth the command of the Lord's hosts. Let there be then the binding of those evil spirits incarnate and fallen angels who move against the nations, who move against the common people themselves, to take from them their life, their livelihood, and their purpose and reason for being. The hand of God does move in the earth through the archangels in this hour, and many beings of light whose names are unknown to you. The forces of heaven are mighty to deliver you in your soul and in your innermost being, and to deliver the nations. Yet the people must rise up to challenge their leaders who would lead them astray, lead them down the primrose path of the ruination of soul and government, of economy and the social order. You are beholding with your very eyes those evil spirits in embodiment who will massacre those by the thousands and the 10,000s, whose presence in the earth is an inconvenience to their power struggles. We, the archangels, have existed for eons. We have fought on the side of right, but where the people do not espouse righteousness and the cause of God, how can we intercede? For you reign supreme on earth by your free will, and this the pastors have not taught you. You ought not to wait for divine intervention, but to see that you yourselves must play your role to defend the role of woman, to defend the Blessed Mother and her man-child, to defend life in the womb that is also being massacred by the practice of abortion that is ungodly. I come also then to speak for those souls who have shortly been killed by the abortionist hand, and the 25 million in this nation alone. I speak in their defense and yours also, for this crime must be undone, even as the crimes against the Kurds, the Iraqis, the Tibetans, the Afghans, and on throughout the earth must be undone. Let your voices be raised then in protest against those who do not defend life, life at any stage, life that is human and therefore God's. I am surely come to you to spare you the karma of neglect and the karma of silence when you do not let your voice count when these things take place. Blessed hearts, it is a time for the rallying of the children of the light on earth. It is a time to say halt to those who stand in positions of leadership and yet fear to take their stand for life, lest it will be politically unpopular. Those who follow the expediencies of politics, you may consider then well in your heart where they will arrive. For how are the mighty fallen, and the captains and the kings? Yes, beloved, they do not appear in the day of the Lord's glory, for they have turned against God in his people. May you look at your life and review it now, instead of waiting before you will appear before the court of the sacred fire and the lords of karma. May you review it now, beloved, and undo those things which you know you will later regret. Assign yourself a penance as you confess your sins to Almighty God, and therefore know that you can be forgiven, and you can pay the price, and you can deal with the karma, and you can assist Jesus Christ in his mission this day of the saving of souls. You can help the Blessed Virgin as she does go forth into the astral plane for the saving of those souls, for she is the one who does descend there daily. O beloved ones of light, we are angels, and we come to minister to every part of life. We invite you to join us as we minister to you. May you minister unto those with us who do not have this word of consolation, who do not know that they may call to us. Teach them how to pray, for prayer has become a dead ritual in many quarters, and the children of the light do not know that they may enlist all of the forces of heaven in the cause of truth on earth. May you find the strength to fulfill all requirements of your life, and yet prefer the law of God and enter into that zeal of the Lord. May that zeal be the eating up of the whole house of your being until you are aflame as Zarathustra, as Melchizedek, as the mighty ones of God. We are spirits of living fire, and we also appear to you in the rainbow rays of that fire. We come to consume in your households all hindrances of the mind and heart. We come to assist you that you might assist others. May you know that this final decade of this 2,000-year cycle is a major challenge for every individual upon earth. That you may pass your tests and rise higher is our prayer and is our assistance. Yet you know the law. Your call does compel our answer, for we are servants appointed by God to minister unto his sons and daughters upon earth. Yet if we do not have your call and your leave, we may not enter into the problems of the equations of your lives. Remember this. Some pray so long that they think they need no longer pray, and just when a call to us is necessary for the liberation of your soul or a difficult situation, there is silence. Blessed ones, a perpetual prayer is the prayer of the heart that does always pray even while you go about your business and deal with all those things that are required of your karma. I am Gabriel, comforter of life. I come then not only with the annunciation of the birth of all children upon earth to parents who will have them, not only with the annunciation of the passing to the next plane, and not even alone with the annunciation of the call to your victory and the call to join the armies of light. For I also come with the annunciation of wars and rumors of wars and of Armageddon itself. We, the archangels, do sound our trumpets, even as we have poured out the vials of the 7 last plagues upon earth. And they have been poured, beloved, and you have heard our dictations concerning these subjects, and therefore you know that these are vials of karma that have increased on the planet, therefore causing a greater density as well as a restraint upon the works of evil. One wonders how much more evil can be done, and how that which is happening could appear to be restrained. Well, I tell you, were it not for the restraint of descending karma, binding individuals to their past responsibilities, far greater wars would have already ensued upon this planet. There is indeed a mighty intercession by the hosts of the Lord, and those who do not realize this wonder what God is doing and why God does leave them to their plight. And you also know the law, that the law of karma requires individuals to work out their salvation, as the apostle said, with fear and with trembling. Therefore I do come to you, and you may hear in me the release now of that sacred fire, as I do intensify my delivery unto you. Know therefore that you ought to count your blessings daily, to know what divine intercession has come about upon earth in answer to the prayers of so many people of all faiths. Blessed ones, things would be far worse than they are today. Look then to the second coming of Jesus Christ, but do not look to it as a panacea for all things, for truly that second coming must be accompanied by the full integration of your soul with the living Christ, and the descent of that Christ bodily into your temple and every temple of light that is raised up. Therefore know that when Christ does come to you and to all peoples, unless you are ready, you shall not derive the benefit of that event. So it has well been said, prepare to meet thy God. Meet thy God today and every day, and you shall scarcely notice the transition from one plane to the next. There will be no surprises unto those who are faithful and just and sincere, and shun hypocrisy, and shun the lie and the liar, and the murderer and the murderous intent. I am Gabriel. I have descended into this city. I am come for the routing of all false religion and false teachers. I have come for the routing of the seed of Satan and of those practitioners, sorcerers, witchcraft, and those who enter in to the courts of Satan. The legions of light do descend. Let light bearers of this city keep the flame and the vigil, whereby the prayers for the removing of these astral forces shall result in greater protection, greater unfoldment, and greater abundance of a spiritual path here and in this state. Therefore let the demons that prowl and that howl against the light bearers be bound, and let all people come into the knowledge and awareness of the God who is with them. I come to deliver the weary. I come to deliver those who have lost their faith in God, who doubt and fear and know not that God is real. I, Gabriel, minister to every part of life, and I leave not one soul left aside this night. For I am able to go myself to multiply myself unto them, and my legions with me. Therefore, O beloved of the light, I release to you now the light of victory, as well as the light of the judgment of forces of darkness. May you take it up, may you multiply it, and may this weekend be a prayer vigil as well for the victory of all who abide here. And may rings of light go forth and move to cover the earth with the radiance of your invocations of light. I am Gabriel with hope. I charge you now with the promise of victory. If you fail not and faint not, and fulfill all things to which our God has sent you to be on this earth in this auspicious moment, with the sign of the 7 archangels, in the name Jesus Christ. I have come, I am here, and I shall not leave you, each one, until you shall have fulfilled your reason for being. Amen.